Hello, everyone. I'm Renee, and this is Renee, a channel where we talk about transformation and change, um, and really providing not just an understanding of the process, but also support through the process, since not everyone is comfortable when when transformation wants to happen, or when it visits us, particularly if it's doing so unexpectedly. Um, in this video today, I want to talk about the first step in the journey of transformation. And that first step is around awareness and awakening. And so when we think about awareness, it can show up in a multitude of ways. Um, you might just become aware of a longing that you have, um, this kind of niggling feeling, or sometimes somebody will report, I really felt like I was drawn to this place, and suddenly I'm seeing signs, billboards with that place on it, or a magazine cover with that place on it. Suddenly it's everywhere. And it's because it's becoming more in your awareness. So you're becoming aware of that longing. Um, and that's really that first activation step, that there's an inner desire for change. And 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 that first step of understanding what needs to transform. Um, it could start out as just an awareness of something's not working right, like something no longer feels good anymore. It could be it could be a job. You might be in a job and suddenly it's just not fun anymore. It's not feeling good anymore. Or you might be in a relationship that feels that way, or in a friendship that might end up feeling that way. So, feeling like something is no longer working. Um, Sometimes the awareness shows up for us just as a whisper. It's that intuition nudge, if you will. Uh, but, but sometimes spirit works in mysterious ways, and it can show up like a ton of bricks. Sometimes it can show up as a loss or a crisis. Um, just um, you know, for me, um, in 2020, well, beginning in 2023, I lost my beloved. And then in early 2024, I lost my father, his wife, and a dear friend of mine, all in the span of about 3 months' time. And when death visits you in that way, the human brain learns through contrast. And when you see that much death, and um, and you acknowledge that feeling that those people may have had, that they wish they would have done one more thing, or they wish they would have done something else. It, like it really sinks into you, and it becomes this kind of catalyst where you really feel drawn to saying yes to life in ways that you might have been afraid to before. um, I will say without a doubt, all of those deaths made me saying yes to my lifelong dream of living in France much, much easier, because I really just got to the point of, what do I have to lose? Um, I had carried the dream for far too long, far too long. So death, loss, grief. We've all heard those stories of people who have lost a job and been absolutely devastated by that loss, but then found a way through that loss only to find work that they loved even more, or a business opportunity that they ended up being hugely successful at. There's tons of those stories out there. So, um, seeing a loss as an opportunity, when you're in the loss, that is very hard to do. Totally get that, and absolutely empathize with that. I could not have seen that, um, that that my beloved's death would have been an opportunity for anything at the time. Um, and yeah, even to this day, those those feelings are raw still. But but knowing knowing that pull inside me towards saying yes to life because of those deaths, um, made saying that yes so much easier. So the other, really around awareness, the final point that I want to make is really about bringing what might be in the unconscious into the conscious. So you may have been carrying this longing in your unconscious for a long time. I carried my longing about living in France for a very long time. And when I would visit here, it would absolutely come into my conscious. And then I would go back to the States and I would get back plugged into my work and family and obligations and all of the things. And it would slide right back in to the unconscious until it was brought to my awareness again and again over the years. I'm grateful that it kept getting brought back into my conscious, in those subtle ways, whether it would be the nudge that I needed to go to France for a trip, or the nudge that I needed to take a French class. All of those subtle nudges kept bringing it back into my conscious. So, what are those things for you over time that kind of slip and slide out of your unconscious into your conscious, but they never quite go away? They're just kind of niggling there. So once you become aware of this longing, this desire, the next kind of part of this phase is really the awakening of it. It's really sparking that vision. Um, like, what does this desire that you have, what would that look like? What would life look like if you actually said yes to it? What would it look like if you put this first and foremost and just grabbed it? How would you feel in that new life, that new, whether it's a new place, a new relationship, a new job, a new friendship, a new whatever the thing is for you? How would that feel? In a lot of ways, as we start to look at that, in shamanism, there's this term called the choiceless choice. So for me, the day that I realized that there was no more things preventing me from coming to France, there was an absolute path that the only thing that I had to do was say yes to it. When I sat there thinking about that, I was reminded of this choiceless choice. Because it felt in that moment that if I didn't make that choice, that a part of me inside would die too. I really held that. When there's been major events in my life where I have felt a choiceless choice. asking for a divorce when it was the last thing I really wanted, but feeling like it was a choiceless choice. I had to do it to save me. Um, there's those kinds of choices along the way that just deep down inside, we have a knowing that if we don't make that choice, we'll lose an important part of us. So look at whether you actually feel like you have a choiceless choice. Um, you know, how does that feel for you? Do you feel like if you don't say yes to something that you'll lose a significant part of yourself? So after you've kind of looked at the choice and really sat with this, sometimes you can feel like there's really only one path forward that feels authentic or viable or true for you. Um, that's really an inevitable yes when saying no feels like you would be betraying yourself, you know, um, that you would leave part of you behind. Hello, Paolo. You were just running in the yard? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Come on, finish. So the last thing I would leave you with is as you're evaluating, um, as you're looking at um, becoming aware of this desire within you and really awakening to it, you can also look at it from the other side that when you think about staying and saying no to it, um, when that becomes harder than leaving, whether you're leaving a job or a relationship or a country or like when that kind of status quo of life becomes more painful than the unknown, um, because that's really the comparison that you're making. Uh, Making a large change is it's the unknowable. You can't have all of the answers. You don't know if it'll work out, and yet saying yes to it is a way of saying yes to yourself, and that can never be a wrong answer. So this is the first stage of transformation and change. It's the awareness and awakening step. So I hope this is helpful in some way as you might be looking at your own life, as we're all kind of thinking about the end of 2025, the beginning of 2026, and what changes might you want to make in 2026? What changes are you feeling are coming into your consciousness, into your awareness? Okay. If you need any help, I'll leave a link how to find me in the show notes below. There's also freebies on my website if you're looking for support on moving to France. And with that, I will just say, a biento.